For 10 long years, the wasteland had no sound except the burning winds. No footsteps, no voices, no signs of life. Only broken stones, dead trees, and a small ruined shelter made of metal scraps. Inside that shelter lived a woman the world had forgotten. Her name was Ryla. She could not see. She could not speak. She moved like a shadow, slow and careful, her hands touching every wall until she found her way. Her eyes were covered with old scars, thin white lines that told a story of pain. Her throat was marked too, where her voice had once lived. She had lost everything 10 years ago. Ryla belonged to a proud, alien tribe known for strict laws. In her world, mistakes were punished brutally. Even a small accident could bring terrible judgment. The rulers called it purity justice, but there was nothing pure about it. It was fear. It was control. When Ryla was 16, the tribe suffered a disaster. A storage dome exploded, destroying food and water supplies. Someone had to be blamed. Someone weak. Someone who could not fight back. They chose her. The elders claimed she caused the explosion, even though she was innocent. She cried, begged, and tried to defend herself, but her voice didn't matter. In one night, her life changed. Her eyes were burned by hot light. Her throat was cut so she could never speak against them again. And then, they threw her into the wasteland to die alone. But she survived by touch, by instinct, by memory. She learned the paths of the broken land. She felt vibrations in the ground, smelled danger, and listened to the winds to know when storms were coming. She lived without hope. She lived because she had no other choice. But everything changed the night. The storm arrived. Dark clouds rolled across the wasteland like giant beasts. Lightning flashed over the sky. Wind pushed against her shelter, shaking the metal walls. Ryla curled in a corner, hugging herself tightly. She could not scream, but her silent fear filled the air. Then she felt something strange. Footsteps, not heavy like the tribe's hunters. Not light like the small desert animals. This sound was unfamiliar, measured, careful, human. Ryla lifted her head. Her heart pounded hard. For 10 years, no one had walked toward her shelter. The footsteps stopped right in front of the door. Ryla's hands moved fast. She grabbed a stone, a sharp one she always kept for emergencies. Blind or not, she was ready to defend herself. She pressed her back against the wall, breathing fast. The door opened slowly with a metal creak. A tall figure entered, shaking sand off his jacket. His clothes were dark, covered with dust. His hair was messy from the storm. His eyes scanned the shelter with surprise. His name was Ethan, a human explorer from a distant colony. He came searching for old ruins. He never expected to find someone living here. When he saw Ryla, his face froze. She was thin, dirty, shaking, holding a stone like a weapon. But what shocked him was her eyes. They were white and scarred, with no sign of sight. Ethan slowly raised both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. Ryla couldn't understand his words, but she understood his tone. Calm, soft, careful. Still, she did not lower her stone. Ethan took one step forward and stopped immediately when he saw her trembling. "It's okay," he said. "I promise." Ryla listened to his voice. It sounded warm, nothing like the harsh elders who once destroyed her life. But she was scared. No stranger had come here before. Why now? Why him? Ethan noticed her throat scars. "You can't speak?" he whispered. Ryla flinched. Her hands tightened around the stone. He reached into his bag very slowly, making sure she could sense his movements. Then he placed something on the ground, a small pack of food. "You're starving," he said. "Eat, please." The smell reached her first. Her body reacted without permission. Hunger pulled her forward, but fear pushed her back. She did not move. Ethan gently slid the food closer to her feet. "I won't touch you," he promised. "Just eat." For a long moment, Ryla did nothing. Then, her fingers touched the pack. She sniffed it. Her hands shook. Finally, she opened it and tasted the food. Tears ran down her scarred cheeks. Ethan watched quietly. "What did they do to you?" he whispered. He slowly knelt in front of her. Rayla reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his face, her way of understanding someone new. Ethan froze, but let her touch him. Her fingers traced his jaw, his cheeks, his nose. She wanted to know if his face matched his gentle voice. When her fingers touched his eyes, she pulled back suddenly. Painful memories flashed in her mind. Ethan understood. Someone had blinded her. He spoke softly. "Ryla, who hurt you?" She lowered her head. She couldn't answer. Ethan looked at her damaged. Eyes again hurt, filling his chest. Then he said something that made her whole body go still. "Ryla, I can help you see again." Ryla's breath caught. For 10 years, no one had spoken those words. No one had offered hope. She did not know if she should trust this human. But for the first time since her punishment, a tiny spark lit inside her darkness. Hope. The storm outside grew louder, striking the metal walls like angry fists. But inside the small broken shelter, the air had become strangely calm. Rayla sat close to the wall, holding the food Ethan had given her. Her hands still trembled. She had never expected help, especially not from a human stranger. Ethan stayed a few steps away so she wouldn't feel threatened. The soft light from his wrist lamp showed her thin frame, the scars on her eyes, and the way she flinched every time thunder cracked. He felt a heavy ache in his chest. No one deserved a life like this. "Ryla," he said slowly, as if she could understand every word, "I'm not leaving you here." She did not answer because she could not. She only kept her head down, listening to the tone of his voice. No anger, no judgment. Only kindness. Something she had forgotten existed. Ethan lowered his bag and pulled out a small heater device. With a press, warm air spread into the shelter. Rayla's body reacted instantly. She leaned closer, trying to warm her hands. Ethan smiled a little. "You must be freezing," he whispered. Ryla lifted her face slightly. She could not see him, but she could feel the gentleness in his words. She slowly placed the empty food wrapper aside and touched the floor, searching for something. Then she wrote a shape in the dirt using her finger, a simple circle with lines around it. Ethan bent down. "A sun?" he guessed. "You like the warmth?" Rayla nodded once. He understood she could communicate with symbols. So he sat beside her close, but not touching. "How long have you been here?" Ethan asked softly. Ryla drew another shape. A tall line. Then 10 small marks. Ethan's eyes widened. 10 years? She nodded again. 10 years in darkness. 10 years unable to speak. 10 years alone in this wasteland. He looked away, anger burning in his chest, not at her, but at whoever had done this to her. "Your tribe did this?" Rayla's fingers shook as she wrote one last shape, a twisted spiral, the symbol of guilt in her culture. Then she crossed it out. Ethan understood the message. She was punished for a sin she never committed. He clenched his fists. "Then I won't let them continue hurting you." Rayla's breathing changed. She touched the ground again, slowly writing another symbol. A question mark drawn in her own alien way. "Why?" His voice softened. "Why am I helping you?" Ethan thought for a moment. The storm outside screamed, but inside he spoke with calm strength. "Because you deserve a chance," he said. "Because your life matters. And because no one should face the world alone." Rayla felt something warm inside her chest, something she had not felt in a decade. Trust, a small piece of it. Fragile but growing. Suddenly, Rayla stiffened. Her head turned sharply toward the doorway. "What is it?" Ethan asked. She pointed to her ear, signaling sound. Her hearing was sharper than any sighted person's. She could hear things. Long before others did. Ethan stood up and turned off his wrist lamp. Darkness filled the shelter, but Ryla didn't need light. She listened. Footsteps. But not human. Not like Ethan's calm steps. These were heavy, hard, familiar. Ryla's hand tightened. Her worst fear had returned. Ethan whispered, "Who is it?" She quickly traced a symbol on the floor. A triangle with jagged edges. Ethan recognized it immediately. It was the mark he had seen on the hunter's armor during earlier explorations. Her tribe's soldiers. His heart dropped. "They're searching for you." Rayla nodded. Her breathing grew faster. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder carefully. She didn't pull away this time. "We have to leave," he said. "If they find you, they will kill you." She hesitated, afraid, but Ethan guided her hand toward him, letting her feel the truth in his touch. "I promised I won't let anything happen to you." The footsteps grew louder. Sand shifted under armored boots outside the shelter. Ethan grabbed his small light pack and pulled Ryla gently. "Come on, stay close to me." Rayla followed him, her hand gripping the corner of his jacket. The storm had eased, but the night was still cold. They stepped outside into darkness, moving carefully along the rocky path behind the shelter. From the shadows, Ryla heard a voice, low, harsh, hateful. She knew that voice. The voice of one of the hunters who had exiled her. Ethan pressed a finger to his lips, though she couldn't see it. But she felt his caution from the way he froze. The hunters searched the shelter, metal clanging and footsteps echoing. "She was here," one growled. "Find her." Ethan leaned close to Ryla's ear and whispered, "We have to move before they spread out." Rayla nodded, trusting him more with each second. They walked quietly, staying low among the rocks. Rayla's hands brushed the ground to guide her steps. Ethan held her elbow gently to help her avoid sharp stones. The hunters' voices faded slowly, but the danger had not passed. When they reached an old ridge, Ethan stopped. "We can't go back. They'll keep searching." He turned toward her, knowing she couldn't see the determination in his eyes. "I'm taking you with me. Somewhere safe. Somewhere far from here." Rayla touched his hand, her silent way of asking if he was sure. "I won't walk away from you," Ethan said. "Not now. Not ever. And for the first time in 10 years. Rayla smiled, a small smile. A delicate one, but it was real. The night air grew colder as Ethan and Rayla moved farther from the ruined shelter she had lived in for 10 long years. The ground beneath them was uneven, cracked like old bones, and the wind carried the sharp smell of dust. Rayla walked slowly, her hand lightly touching Ethan's arm whenever she needed direction. He let her lead the pace, knowing she moved by sense, not sight. They reached a small valley between 2 broken cliffs. Here the wind was softer, and the shadows deeper. Ethan stopped and lowered his bag. "We'll rest here for a moment," he whispered. Rayla nodded and sat on a flat rock. She took a deep breath, listening to every sound around them. Her tribe's hunters were far now, but she knew they wouldn't give up easily. They never forgave mistakes, especially ones they created themselves. Ethan studied her for a moment. He had so many questions. Why did her people do this to her? Why were they still hunting her? What secret was she forced to carry in silence? But he didn't want to push her. Instead, he sat beside her, leaving a respectful space. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," Ethan said softly. "I'll protect you." Rayla turned her head toward his voice. She slowly reached down and brushed her fingers across the dirt between them. Then she began to draw. Ethan watched carefully. First, she drew a large circle, her tribe's homeland. Then she drew a building, the supply dome that had exploded 10 years ago. Ethan leaned forward. "This is where it happened?" Rayla nodded. She added small lines showing the blast, then a symbol of accusation, a pointed arrow aimed at her. Ethan's chest tightened. "They blamed you." She paused, then drew another symbol. A tall rectangle with a mark at the top. An elder, Ethan swallowed. One person blamed you? Rayla shook her head and drew 2 more rectangles. 3 elders in total. They decided your punishment together. Ethan asked. Rayla pressed her finger hard into the dirt, anger in the way she carved the symbol. Then she drew a final mark under the first elder. A hidden circle. Ethan frowned. A secret? Rayla nodded. Slowly, painfully, she began to trace a memory into the dirt. Ethan could almost feel the emotion coming from her: fear, betrayal, and something deeper. She drew the storage dome again. But this time she added something new, a small box inside the dome, marked with a symbol for forbidden energy. Ethan's eyes widened. It wasn't an accident. Rayla shook her head. Her fingers trembled as she continued drawing. The explosion wasn't caused by her. It was caused by the elders. Ethan leaned forward. You knew the truth? Rayla nodded once, slowly, sadly. And they punished you so you could never reveal it. Ethan guessed. Rayla touched her throat, tracing the scar where her voice had once been. It was her silent answer. Ethan felt rage burning inside. So instead of taking responsibility, they destroyed your life? They blinded you. They cut your voice. They left you to die, just to hide their own mistake. A soft breath escaped Rayla, an almost silent sound, like a broken whisper. She bowed her head. The truth was too heavy. She had carried it for a decade, alone in darkness. Ethan moved closer and gently placed a hand on her arm, not to control her, but to comfort her. Rayla didn't move away. You didn't deserve any of this, he murmured. You were innocent. Rayla's fingers touched his hand with a grateful, fragile motion. But then her hand froze. She turned her ear toward the cliffside, suddenly alert. Ethan followed her gaze instinctively, even though she could not see him doing it. What is it? He whispered. Rayla pointed toward the rocks. Her face hardened with fear. Footsteps, soft, distant. But coming closer. Ethan quickly turned off his wrist light. Shadows swallowed them completely. He gently pulled Rayla behind a large boulder. The footsteps grew clearer. This time, there were 2 of them moving slowly, scanning, searching. Ethan tensed. Did they follow us? He whispered. Rayla shook her head. She traced a symbol on his hand instead, a spiral. The sign for tracking device. Ethan froze. They placed a tracker near your shelter earlier. It meant the hunters were tracing her scent, her steps, anything that carried her presence. They would keep coming until she was dead. The silhouettes of 2 armored hunters appeared at the top of the ridge, their glowing weapons lighting the rocks. Ethan whispered. Don't move. Rayla stayed perfectly still, her fingers gripping Ethan's sleeve. She couldn't see the danger, but she could feel it from his tense breathing. One hunter said, "She is close. The tracker shows movement." Another replied, "We finish it tonight." The elders want her erased. Rayla's shoulders shook, not with fear but with a heavy, painful memory. The same voices, the same threats, the same cruelty she heard 10 years ago when they cast her out. Ethan clenched his jaw. "They won't touch you," he whispered fiercely. The hunters scanned the valley with bright sensors. Ethan held his breath. Rayla held his arm tighter. After a long moment, the hunters walked farther away, moving toward the opposite side of the valley. Their voices faded slowly. When they were finally gone, Ethan exhaled. "We can't keep running like this," he said. Rayla touched his hand again, as if asking what he meant. "We need to disappear." "Hide somewhere they can't find us," Ethan said. "And we need to clear your name." Rayla's eyes widened slightly at the idea, not fear, but hope. A small, trembling hope. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "We'll find the truth. We'll expose what they did to you." In the Valley of Shadows, with danger behind them and an uncertain future ahead, Rayla nodded. For the first time in 10 years, She was not alone. And she was no longer a silent victim. She was a survivor, ready to face the past with someone who finally believed her. Asterisk, the valley grew darker as clouds spread over the sky. Ethan and Ryla moved quickly, staying close to the rock walls where shadows hid them. Ryla walked with her hand lightly gripping Ethan's sleeve, trusting him completely now. Ethan guided her carefully, avoiding loose stones and sharp edges, but the danger was not behind them anymore. It was everywhere. The hunters had split into groups. Their voices echoed faintly across the wasteland, mixed with the beeping of tracking devices. Ryla recognized the sounds instantly. 10 years ago, she had heard those same devices when the hunters drove her into exile. They were hunting her again. Ethan glanced behind them. "They're sweeping the whole area," he whispered. "We need to reach higher ground." Ryla nodded. Her senses were sharp. Even without eyes, she felt vibrations in the stones, smelled the burning chemical scent of the hunters' equipment, and heard the subtle clicking of their armor joints. She suddenly pulled Ethan's sleeve and pointed left. "You hear something?" he whispered. She nodded twice. Ethan listened. At first he heard nothing. Then a faint metallic tap. A sensor drone. It was moving toward them. "We need cover, now." He grabbed her hand gently and guided her toward the base of a cliff. They found a narrow crack between two giant rocks. Ethan squeezed in first, pulling Ryla in after him. The space was tight, but it shielded them from the open valley. A few seconds later, a floating drone passed by, scanning the area with a bright red light. Ryla's fingers tightened around Ethan's wrist. The red glow passed dangerously close to her legs. Ethan held his breath until the drone finally continued. Forward. Only after the sound faded did he allow himself to exhale. "That was close," he whispered. Ryla touched the ground and drew a small shape, a warning spiral. "They'll come again." Ethan interpreted. She nodded. Ethan looked up at the cliff walls. "If we reach the old ruins on the ridge, we can hide there. There might still be working tech." Then he added softly, "And maybe something to help your eyes." Ryla paused. The idea of seeing again still felt like a dream she wasn't allowed to believe. But Ethan's voice, steady and warm, made that dream feel possible. She touched his hand, agreeing to follow him. They crawled out once the coast was clear. The chase tightens, the wind shifted. Ryla stopped walking and turned toward the north. Ethan froze too. "What do you hear?" "Footsteps, many, moving fast. A hunting squad," Ethan cursed under his breath. "They're closing in." He pulled Ryla toward a steep slope leading upward. The climb was difficult. The rocks were sharp, and dust slipped under their feet. Ryla used both her hands, feeling every inch. Ethan stayed beside her, giving gentle support. Behind them, the voices of hunters grew louder. "She's near." One shouted, "Track the human too." Another ordered. Ethan whispered urgently, "Just a little more." "We're almost." A beam of blue light shot past his shoulder, striking the rock and exploding into sparks. Ryla gasped without sound. "They're firing!" Ethan yelled. He grabbed her waist and pushed her behind a large boulder. More shots echoed across the valley. The hunters weren't trying to scare them. They were trying to kill. Ethan peeked around the rock and saw 3 hunters aiming from the slope below. "We need to move," he hissed. Ryla nodded quickly. She reached out, found Ethan's hand, and held it tightly. Trusting him completely, she ran beside him. They climbed higher, moving fast despite the difficult path. Ryla used her instincts to avoid loose stones. Ethan covered her whenever shots came close. Another energy blast hit a rock near Ryla's foot, sending debris flying. Ethan shielded her with his arm. "Are you okay?" he whispered. She touched his hand, her silent way of saying, "Yes." But the hunters were too close. Ethan could hear their boots scraping the rocks. "We can't outrun them," he muttered. We need a diversion. He looked around quickly. Then he saw it. An old metal structure half buried in the cliffside, likely part of an ancient mining station. If we get inside that, we might lose them. He guided Rayla toward the structure. The door was rusted, but Ethan kicked it open with a loud crash. They slipped inside just as another shot burned the air behind them. The interior was dark, dusty, and filled with broken equipment. But it had many rooms and tunnels perfect for losing pursuers. Ethan turned to Rayla. "Stay close. Don't let go of my hand." She squeezed his fingers firmly. Inside the ruins, they moved quietly through the corridors. Old hologram panels flickered weakly as they passed. Rayla reached out to touch the walls, feeling the vibrations of distant footsteps above them. "They're on the roof," Ethan whispered. "They'll search the inside soon." He led her into a control room. Broken screens covered the walls. In the center stood a large metal console with a cracked display. Ethan quickly checked the panel. Some wires still worked. "If I overload the power node," he murmured, "I can cause a small explosion in the far corridor. They'll think we escaped that way." Rayla touched his arm, questioning the danger. "I'll be careful," he promised. He worked fast, connecting wires and adjusting old switches. Sparks crackled from the console. The hunters entered the structure. Ethan whispered, "Get ready." He pressed a final switch. A loud blast shook the corridor on the opposite side of the ruins. The hunters shouted, "She's escaping that way." Their footsteps rushed away from the room. Ethan grabbed Ryla's hand. "Come on. Now we go the other way." A silent escape, they slipped through a maintenance tunnel, moving deeper into the ruins. When they finally exited into open air again, the hunters were far behind. Ethan breathed hard. "We made it. For now." Rayla touched his hand softly. Not fear this time. Gratitude. But the night was not quiet anymore. Far in the distance, a new sound echoed across the rocks. A horn. A signal. The tribe's leader himself had joined the hunt. The real danger was just beginning. The night air outside the ruins was unusually still. No wind, no shifting sand. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Ethan and Rayla stood on a narrow ledge overlooking a steep drop. Below them stretched an old mining valley filled with broken machines and collapsed tunnels. "We need shelter," Ethan whispered. Rayla nodded and touched the ground with her hand, feeling the direction of the wind, the vibrations and the shape of the rocks. She pointed toward a deeper part of the valley, a place hidden between tall metal beams. "You know a safe way?" Ethan asked softly. She nodded again. Even without sight, Rayla remembered every inch of the wasteland. She had survived by living like the land was part of her body. Now she used that instinct to guide Ethan through the darkness. They moved carefully, stepping over rusted pipes and shattered panels. Ethan kept one hand on her shoulder to steady her across unstable ground. Halfway down, Rayla suddenly stopped. Ethan froze too. "What is it?" He whispered. She placed his hand on a rock, slightly warm. Ethan frowned. Warm rock in a cold night? That meant only one thing. Tracks. The hunters had passed through here recently. "We don't have much time," he said. Rayla touched his hand, telling him to trust her, and began moving faster. They reached a narrow passage hidden behind an old metal crane. At the end of the passage stood a large structure, partially buried in dirt. A forgotten, underground facility. Ethan pushed the heavy door open with effort. A cloud of dust burst out. Inside, darkness swallowed everything. Rayla stepped in first without fear. Darkness was her world. Ethan followed and activated a small blue light on his wrist. The room lit up faintly, revealing walls lined with old machines, medical pods, and cracked glass tubes. Rayla's steps slowed. Her hand brushed the surface of a pod. The cold metal made her shiver. "It looks like an old research station," Ethan said. "Maybe there's something that can help you." Rayla turned her head toward his voice. Her face softened, a hope she rarely allowed herself to feel. But before she could speak with gestures, Ethan's body suddenly stiffened. A sharp pain shot through his leg. He gasped and collapsed to one knee. "Ethan!" Rayla's breath caught, though no sound escaped her throat. He pressed his hand to his thigh. Blood seeped between his fingers. A bullet graze. A shot from the hunters during their escape. "I didn't think it hit me," he said through gritted teeth. Rayla dropped beside him, searching his wound with gentle fingers. She found the bleeding spot and quickly tore a strip from her own clothing. She pressed it firmly against his leg. Ethan winced but forced a smile. "You're saving me now. Guess we're even." She shook her head strongly. She didn't want him hurt for her. He placed his hand over hers. "Rayla, I'm fine, really. I've had worse." But she knew he was lying. She took his hand and placed it against her heart, her way of saying, "Don't lie to me." "I care." Ethan's breath caught. The bond between them, built in silence and darkness, was stronger than words. He slowly stood, leaning on her for support. "Let's find something to fix this." They searched deeper inside the underground station. The rooms were filled with ancient machines, dusty screens, and old radiation suits. At last they entered a large chamber with 3 medical pods arranged in a circle. Most were broken. Except one. A faint green light still glowed inside it. Ethan's eyes widened. "A regeneration pod. If this still works, it could fix your eyes." Rayla's hands trembled. She approached the pod and touched it gently, feeling the warm hum of power. Her throat tightened with emotion. Seeing again. After 10 years. Felt impossible, dangerous, unreal. But Ethan stepped up beside her. "I promised you," he whispered. "We'll try." She turned toward him and gently touched his face, mapping the shape she could only imagine. Was he kind-looking? Strong? Gentle? She didn't know. But she trusted him as someone who carried light inside him. Her fingers slid to his wound. Ethan winced. "Don't worry about me," he said softly. "This place might fix me too, but you go first." Rayla shook her head strongly. She refused. Ethan smiled. "We can do it together." Then he looked at the control panel. "There's enough power for 1 full cycle. Maybe 2 short ones. We need to be smart." But Rayla stepped forward and wrote on the dusty screen, "You first." Ethan stared at the words. "No, you waited 10 years for hope. I won't take that from you." She wiped the words away and wrote again, "You bleed." "I wait," Ethan sighed. She was stubborn, but in a gentle, protective way. He finally nodded. "All right. We heal my leg first. Then we fix your eyes." Rayla helped him climb into the pod. As the machine closed around him, she held the glass window, her hand trembling. Ethan's voice came through a small speaker. "Stay close. Don't be afraid." The machine activated. Lights glowed inside. Soft steam filled the pod. Ethan closed his eyes, but before the healing cycle finished, Rayla heard something that froze her blood. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Familiar. From deep in the tunnels behind them. The hunters had found the facility. Rayla placed her hand on the pod, not in fear, but in determination. If they wanted Ethan, they would go through her first. Asterisk. The underground chamber trembled as heavy footsteps echoed through the metal corridors. Rayla stood in front of the regeneration pod, her hands curled into shaking fists. She couldn't see who was coming, but she didn't need sight to recognize the pattern of those steps. Hunters. And not the ordinary ones. These footsteps were slower, heavier, belonging to someone high-ranking, someone who once sentenced her to blindness. Rayla's breath tightened. She placed her hand gently on the pod, feeling the vibration of Ethan's healing cycle. He was unconscious inside, his body repairing slowly. He could not defend himself. He couldn't run. Now she had to protect him. The pod's hum masked her trembling. She touched the control panel. It showed 30 seconds left. 30 seconds until Ethan would wake. 30 seconds she had to keep them away. A shadow appeared at the entrance of the chamber. Rayla didn't hear anger. She didn't hear rushing. She heard confidence. The confidence of someone who believed the prey had nowhere left to run. The leader entered first. Rayla knew his steps. The weight. The cruelty. Vornar, High Elder of Purity Justice. The one who ordered her punishment. Behind him, 2 hunters marched, their weapons glowing faint blue in the dark. Spread out, Vornar's cold voice echoed. She is here. The human too. Rayla pressed her back against the pod, ready to fight with her bare hands if she had to. She had no weapon, but she had something she never had in her past, a reason to fight. One of the hunters walked near her. His armor brushed the floor with a scraping sound. Rayla lowered her body slowly, preparing to attack, but before the hunter could spot her, something unexpected happened. The regeneration pod beeped, the cycle completed. Warm flash of light burst from inside. Ethan gasped awake. Rayla turned toward him instinctively. Ethan sat up quickly, disoriented but alive. The wound on his leg was sealed, faintly glowing from recent healing. Then his eyes widened as he saw her standing alone against the hunters. Rayla! He whispered urgently. One of the hunters spun toward the sound. There! The hunter charged. Ethan jumped out of the pod, limping slightly but strong enough. He grabbed a piece of broken metal pipe from the floor. Move! He shouted, swinging at the hunter. The metal hit the hunter's armor with a loud clang. It didn't break the armor, but it knocked the hunter off balance. The second hunter fired a blue shot that missed by inches. Rayla dropped low to avoid the blast and grabbed the fallen metal pipe as well. Though blind, she moved with practiced instinct, swinging the pipe and hitting the second hunter's arm. The weapon clattered to the ground. Ethan stared in shock. How did you? She didn't need sight to fight. She had lived 10 years surviving danger by sound, vibration, smell, and instinct. The first hunter lunged again, but this time Ethan struck him in the helmet. Sparks burst from the crack. The hunter fell hard. Rayla and Ethan stood side by side, now 2 silhouettes in the dim light. United by survival, but the danger wasn't over. The elder stepped forward. Vornar. His voice was smooth, cruel, filled with poisonous calm. Rayla, after 10 years you still run from justice. Ethan stepped in front of her. Justice? You blinded her. You cut her voice. You threw her away for something she didn't do. Vornar laughed softly, as if amused. Yes, she carried dangerous knowledge. Knowledge that threatened the order of our tribe. Rayla clenched the metal pipe so hard her knuckles whitened. Vornar continued, her silence protects our people. It is mercy she still lives. Ethan pointed the metal bar at him. That ends today. The elder lifted his hand. His armor glowed. A powerful energy surged from his gauntlet. Rayla sensed the danger a moment before the strike. She shoved Ethan to the side. The blast hit her squarely in the chest. Her body flew backward, crashing into the medical console. Ethan screamed, Rayla! She lay still. The world around her blurred. Her lungs burned. She couldn't breathe, but then something strange happened. The damaged medical system, sparked by impact, discharged energy again, a burst of warm, glowing light surrounded her face. Ethan rushed to her side. Rayla, stay with me. The console flickered, and a faint voice, automated and robotic, spoke. Ocular reconstruction activated. Ethan's eyes widened. Your eyes. A soft glow surrounded her eyelids. She felt warmth, then pain, then warmth again. It was like sunlight touching her face after years of cold darkness. Slowly, slowly, She opened her eyes. At first, she saw only blur. Colors, shapes, shadows. Then, for the first time in 10 years, she saw light. Her breath hitched. Ethan's face appeared in front of her, worried, desperate, gentle. She reached out and touched his face, but this time she could see what she touched. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. "Ryla," Ethan said, voice shaking. "You're back." Behind them, Vornar stepped forward, furious at what he witnessed. "This is impossible," he snarled. "She must not live." Ryla stood up slowly, eyes glowing with new light and old rage. For 10 years she lived in darkness. Now she saw the man who destroyed her life, and she was no longer afraid. Light returned to Ryla's world like a slow sunrise. Her vision was still blurry, edges soft and glowing, but she could finally see shapes, movement, color. The first clear image she ever saw after 10 years of darkness was Ethan standing in front of her, breathless, bruised, and ready to fight for her. Behind him stood Elder Vornar, rage twisting his features. "You dare heal her?" Vornar roared. She was sentenced to blindness. She must remain silent. Ryla stepped forward before Ethan could answer. Her legs trembled from shock, but her new sight gave her strength she never had before. For a decade she had lived in silence, but now she lifted her hand to her throat and tried to speak. At first, only air escaped her lips. But then a faint sound, a broken whisper, rose from deep inside her. "No." Ethan froze. Vornar's eyes widened. Even Ryla looked shocked by the sound she created. She swallowed hard, pain burning through her throat. But she forced another word out. "No." "More." Her voice was hoarse, thin, shaking, but alive. Vornar snarled. "You dare speak again?" Ryla touched Ethan's arm, asking him silently to let her stand alone now. Ethan hesitated, then stepped aside, trusting her. Ryla faced Vornar fully. For years she had remembered him only by his voice, his cruelty, his judgment. Now she saw his face clearly, cold, proud, and afraid. She took a deep breath. "You lied," she rasped. Her voice cracked painfully, but the truth inside it was stronger than her scars. "You destroyed Dome. You blamed me." Vornar's face twisted. "Silence. Your voice was taken for a reason." "No." Ethan shouted. "Her voice was taken so you could hide your guilt." Ryla pointed at Vornar, her hand trembling. Tears filled her eyes, not of sadness, but of release. 10 years of suffering were finally breaking open. Justice. "Now," she whispered. Vornar raised his gauntlet again to strike, but Ethan moved first. He tackled the elder, slamming him against the metal pillar. The two struggled, sparks flying as Vornar activated his energy blade. Ethan yanked a loose pipe from the wall and blocked the attack. "Ryla, run!" he shouted, but she didn't run. Not anymore. Her sight, though blurry, guided her steps. She grabbed the fallen hunter's weapon from the ground. It felt heavy and cold, but steady in her hands. She remembered how they had held this weapon when they cast her out. Now she held it for her own justice. Vornar shoved Ethan away and turned toward her. "You dare lift a weapon against an elder?" Ryla raised the weapon with shaking arms. "For 10 years. You hunted me," she whispered. "Now I see you." Vornar lunged. Ryla fired. A bright beam burst from the weapon, striking Vornar's gauntlet. It exploded in sparks. Vornar screamed, dropping to his knees as the energy discharged violently. Ethan limped to her side. "Ryla, are you okay?" She nodded, warm tears slipping down her newly healed cheeks. But the fight wasn't over. More footsteps echoed down the corridor. The remaining hunters rushed in, weapons raised. Ethan cursed. "We can't take them all." Ryla didn't look at him. She walked toward Vornar slowly, each step steady and filled with 10 years of pain. The hunters froze when they saw her eyes, no longer white, no longer dead, but glowing faintly from the regeneration energy. She sees again. One hunter whispered, "She speaks." Another said in disbelief. For the first time, their faces weren't filled with duty, but doubt. Ryla stood above Vornar. "You hurt your people," she said softly. "You hurt me. To save yourself." Her voice broke with every word, but she continued. She had waited too long to stop now. Vornar snarled up at her. "Lies! She's a danger to our laws." One hunter stepped forward slowly. "Elder," he said, voice shaking, "is it true? Did you destroy the dome?" Vornar's silence was louder than any confession. Another hunter lowered his weapon. "We punished her for nothing." Ethan stood beside Ryla, placing a hand on her shoulder, not guiding her, but supporting her. Ryla lifted her chin. "No more silence." The hunters looked at each other. One by one, they turned their weapons away from her and toward their fallen elder. Vornar's voice broke. "You fools! She is blind, weak, useless." Ryla stepped closer, her new eyes steady. "I survived darkness," she whispered. "You fear light." With that final truth, the hunters seized Vornar. His rage echoed uselessly in the metal chamber as they dragged him away. Ethan exhaled deeply. "It's over." Ryla turned to him. She blinked slowly, getting used to seeing him clearly. His messy hair, his tired eyes, the dirt on his face. She reached out and touched his cheek, not because she needed to know, but because she finally could see what she touched. Her voice cracked softly. "Thank you, Ethan." He took her hand gently. "You don't have to thank me." Tears rolled down her cheeks, tears of release, of freedom, of finally seeing her world again. She stepped closer and whispered, "You brought back my light." Ethan smiled, warm and proud. "And now you walk in it." Together, they left the underground chamber, leaving behind 10 years of darkness and stepping into a new dawn. A dawn she could finally see.